Ralf Schumacher just called Ferrari's 22-6 approach a disaster, and he's not talking about the car itself. The problem, according to the six-time Grand Prix winner, is how Ferrari is developing it. Schumacher claims the team is building two different cars to satisfy the conflicting preferences of Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc, which would split their resources at the worst possible time. Ferrari tells a completely different story. One of them is wrong. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why this situation is far more complicated than any headline suggests. Speaking on Sky Deutschland's podcast in January 2006, Schumacher didn't hold anything back. His assessment was blunt, describing Ferrari as a team where disaster already seems to be looming again, at least when you read between the lines. What stands out most in his view is that the team appears to be developing two different cars. He pushed the criticism even further. His theory is that Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton have completely different opinions about the car, and that's driving the split development. A disaster from the outset is how he framed it, adding that you simply cannot develop two cars at once. Those are strong words. Coming from someone with 181 race entries and 6 Grand Prix wins across 11 seasons, they carry weight. But here's the thing. Before you take this as gospel, you need to understand what Ferrari is actually doing, because there's a distinction that changes everything about the story. Ferrari is running what they call a Spec A and Spec B approach. Spec A is a basic, mileage-focused car designed for the Barcelona preseason test at the end of January, and it's not meant to chase performance. The goal is to validate technical choices and rack up reliable kilometers without pushing the limits. Spec B is the real race specification, expected to debut at the Bahrain test in February, and that's where performance development actually matters. Fred Vasseur explained this strategy at the end of the 2025 season. The priority right now is mileage, not performance. Getting kilometers on the car validates reliability and technical choices before the team shifts focus to outright speed. His expectation is that every team will show up in Barcelona with something similar. Not quite a mule car, but definitely a Spec A version. 9 test days isn't what teams are used to anymore, and that compressed schedule forces everyone to prioritize differently. And that brings us to the central question. Is Schumacher conflating a normal testing strategy with a fundamental development problem? Or does he have inside information suggesting something worse is happening at Maranello? The honest answer is that nobody outside Ferrari knows for certain. Schumacher himself admitted his claims are based on reading between the lines and following rumors. He hasn't cited specific sources, and Ferrari hasn't responded directly to his comments. What we can do is examine why this rumor even exists, because there's a real foundation underneath it that explains the concern. Hamilton and Leclerc have very different driving styles, and this isn't speculation built on anonymous sources. Documentation from multiple seasons confirms the gap. Hamilton prefers rear stability, wanting a car that's planted and predictable through corners. Leclerc is comfortable with an aggressive, snappy front end, and he can manage oversteer that would unsettle most other drivers on the grid. Early in 2025, Leclerc claimed Hamilton had a very similar driving style to his own. That assessment hasn't aged well at all. Throughout the season, the two drivers showed fundamentally different approaches to the same machinery, and the performance gap between them grew wider as the year went on. Ferrari's 2025 season was a disaster by any measurement you want to use. 4th place in the Constructors' Championship with 398 points, trailing McLaren by 435 points. 0 Grand Prix wins across the entire calendar. That winless record marked Ferrari's first such season since 2021. And the championship position represented a collapse from their earlier ambitions. Hamilton's individual performance made headlines for all the wrong reasons. 6th in the championship with 156 points and 0 Grand Prix podiums for the entire season. That's the first time in his 19-year career he went a full season without standing on a Grand Prix podium. Leclerc outqualified him 19 times across the season and finished 86 points ahead when the final tally came in. When Schumacher suggests Hamilton and Leclerc have completely different opinions about the car, the evidence supports that observation. What remains unclear is whether Ferrari is responding to those differences in a way that creates problems or solves them. Understanding why 2026 matters so much requires looking at the scale of change coming to the sport. This isn't just another regulation tweak. The technical reset happening in 2026 is the biggest in modern F1 history, and every team is essentially starting from scratch. The power unit architecture is completely transformed. Current cars run roughly 82% internal combustion power and 18% electrical, but 2026 splits that to 50/50ths. The internal combustion engine drops from 550 kilowatts to 400 kilowatts, while the MGU-K jumps from 120 kilowatts to 350 kilowatts. That's nearly a 300% increase in electrical power, fundamentally changing how these cars accelerate and manage energy. Gone entirely is the MGU-H, which simplifies the hybrid system but removes a component teams spent years mastering. Energy recovery per lap increases from 2 megajoules to 8.5, and all of this runs on 100% sustainable fuel that behaves differently than what teams have used for decades. Physical dimensions are changing dramatically too. Cars will be 200 mm shorter, with minimum weight dropping from 798 kilograms to 768 kilograms. Width reduces from 2,000 mm to 1,900 mm. DRS disappears entirely, replaced by active aerodynamics with front and rear wing adjustment that switches between corner mode for high downforce and straight line mode for low drag. Every team is starting from scratch with these regulations. That creates both opportunity and risk, depending on how well each organization adapts. For Ferrari, this represents their best chance in years to close the gap on the front runners.